setting the record straight. Some pro-life advocates say recent political headlines missed the mark. Defending David Daleiden. His attorney discusses the legal backlash from his undercover Planned Parenthood investigation. Intensifying search for a Brussels bombing suspect. Why U.S. investigators say not enough is being done. And poignant papal visit. The goal of the Pope's trip to a Greek island. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, April 7th, 2016. Good evening from Washington. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick. Did Donald Trump diss pro-lifers? Some headlines claim he did. Jason Calvi clears up the controversy tonight. Jason?
Yeah, Brian, abortion is once again taking center stage in the presidential campaign. Some media jumped on a story that said Donald Trump had skipped a phone conversation with pro-lifers meeting in this hotel behind me, but that story, not necessarily the case.
The Daily Beast headline reads, "Trump blows off pro-life leaders," and other news sites made similar claims. This latest Trump abortion controversy comes on the heels of his words saying abortion laws are set, and this.
There has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah, there has to be some form.
10 cents, 10 years.
I don't know. That I don't know. That
why
I don't
not?
know. I don't know.
But Trump reversed himself. Now, to the latest wave in the abortion storm. After a regularly scheduled confidential pro-life meeting yesterday in Washington, D.C., it was reported that Trump bailed on a supposedly scheduled call with the pro-life leaders. But in an exclusive interview with News Nightly, organizers with Priests for Life say the stories were incorrect. In no time in our outreach to the Trump campaign did he refuse or blow off or cancel any appointment that we made with him. On the contrary, I think there's a very good open door. And another inside the meeting agrees, saying Trump wasn't on the agenda, but the leaders knew there was only a possibility Trump might call in. So how did the media get it wrong? Trump supporter Dr. Day Gardner was also inside the meeting. She says the reports were totally false, and she calls the articles part of an inside hatchet job of epic proportions.
The Trump campaign press secretary tells us there was never any plans to join the call. Life News has now retracted the story, saying it was wrong. And Priests for Life tells us they do have an expectation that at some point Trump will take part in a conversation with these pro-life leaders. Brian?
Jason, did any other outlets retract their stories?
None that I've seen, except, as I mentioned, Life News. It's been a whirlwind on the campaign trail with abortion. Remember, this Sunday, Hillary Clinton said unborn children have no constitutional rights.
All right, Jason Calvi, downtown D.C. Thank you, Jason. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. President Obama spoke at his former law school today. He's in Chicago pushing for a Senate hearing for his Supreme Court nominee, Chief Judge Merrick Garland. Our White House correspondent Lauren Ashburn joins us now with that story.
Brian, the president taught law at the University of Chicago for more than a decade. Today, he's back, this time for a lecture on the Supreme Court. He cited history as the reason the Senate should hold a hearing on his nominee and said in the past, nominees would be considered in short order. And it was presumed that just as the president had the constitutional duty to make the appointment, the Senate has the constitutional responsibility to give an up or down vote.
Not only are they not willing to hold a vote at this point, they have refused to hold hearings on Judge Garland. And in some cases, Mitch McConnell and others have said, we will not even show the courtesy of meeting with the judge to find out what he thinks. It's not just a matter of who's occupying that ninth seat in the Supreme Court. It has to do with how we as a democracy operate and the particular authority that a court has to bring in order for our democracy to work.
Many Republicans deny that it's their constitutional responsibility to hold the vote before the end of the president's term. During the town hall, the president maligned the use of filibusters to thwart the president. He did acknowledge Democrats are not blameless in this practice. And the president isn't just under fire for his Supreme Court pick. He defended his use of executive powers on a myriad of subjects, including immigration, health care, and his recent regulations stopping U.S. companies from avoiding taxes by placing headquarters overseas. Brian.
Thank you, Lauren Ashburn. And ISIS militants reportedly abduct 300 construction workers in Syria. They were taken from Dumir, near the capital of Damascus. This is the same area where militants launched a surprise attack against government forces earlier this week. The U.S. increases its cyber attacks against ISIS. The offensive targets terrorists in Iraq and Syria. Defense Secretary Ash Carter wants the military to increase its cyber capabilities. He just elevated the Cyber Command Unit to a full, independent military command. The FBI says ISIS tries to avoid detection by using encrypted mobile messaging apps that are difficult to decipher.
Sometimes it's like searching for a needle in a haystack. And when that needle moves to a mobile messaging app that's end-to-end encrypted, that needle disappears. And the great fear that dominates our lives is that that needle is going to reappear at a train station wearing a suicide vest.
The FBI director assures people that its investigation of the iPhone used by the San Bernardino terror suspects will not compromise security for all iPhone users. He says they found a way to access only that specific 5C model. Belgian prosecutors launch a public appeal for any information on the third suspect in the Brussels airport suicide bombings that killed 16 people. Authorities are especially appealing to people who might have filmed or photographed the man in the hat. He was seen with two suicide bombers who died in the March 22nd attacks. Photos released by prosecutors show him leaving the airport on foot. They say he walked to a nearby town and then into Brussels, where all traces of him were lost. A top FBI official says European countries can do more to screen for terrorists crossing their borders from the Middle East. He claims many countries are ignoring useful tools the U.S. provides them. Wyatt Goolsbee reports.
Brian, the director of FBI's Terrorist Screening Center, says he's worried about how European countries are handling the flood of Syrian refugees. He says a lack of coordination could pose a risk to the U.S.
It's concerning that our partners don't use all of our data. We provide them with tools, we provide them with support.
Christopher Pajota is the man responsible for stopping terrorists from entering the country. That means getting as much information about potential threats as he can.
We take that information and we use it the best we can to minimize threats to our communities, but we can't know everything all the time.
And that's why he says a lack of coordination hurts everyone. Here's the problem. The U.S. regularly shares watch lists with EU countries, but the European Union has no central database. Each country has its own watch lists and its own rules for tracking terrorists. Claire Lopez is a longtime national security and intelligence analyst in Washington.
In Europe, you've got these 28 countries, multiple agencies within each one, perhaps, and there is not a perfect sharing arrangement there at all.
Lopez says the EU has created a Europol, a system like Interpol for European countries to share data, but it's still relatively new. One concern is terrorists who don't appear on any watch lists, who try to slip into the U.S. from countries which don't require a traditional visa.
We have to now be careful of those coming from Europe and whether the documentation is good, valid documentation, first of all, but then also is that person someone that should be allowed in without a visa interview by a vice consul at an American consulate or embassy.
EU authorities admit better intelligence sharing is needed between countries. It's one reason why the head of the TSA this week says they must remain vigilant as we get closer to the summer travel season. Brian.
Tough situation. Thank you, Wyatt. Planned Parenthood and the ACLU sue Indiana over its new law restricting abortion. That law protects unborn children with abnormalities and members of other protected classes. It also requires burial or cremation for aborted babies. Sue Swayze is Skyping with us from Indianapolis. Sue is Indiana Right to Life Vice President of Public Affairs. Sue, do you expect that this law will hold up against the legal challenges?
Yes, we do. Actually, we've been watching this from the very beginning, and we think we have a winner here, challenging Roe versus Wade from the question of discrimination.
So is this specifically why it targets unborn children with genetic abnormalities and other protected classes?
That's exactly right. These are the same kind of protections that we afford someone in our society. But unfortunately, in the womb, they're not protected. In fact, they're targeted in many cases. So that's what we're trying to do, is protect those very same things in the womb.
This new law also requires that aborted babies either be buried or cremated. Why is that important, and who would be responsible to do that?
You know, it's very important to us, and I know this is going on all around the country, in fact, after the Planned Parenthood videos of last summer. Granted, these babies have been aborted. They've lost their lives. They've been victims of abortion. But it also applies in Indiana, this new law, to miscarried babies who are left at hospitals as well. And so, regardless of how a baby has lost its life, we believe it's a societal responsibility to provide dignity in its final disposition.
And who would be responsible for that?
The facility, in this case, it would be the abortion clinic or the hospital, would be responsible for the disposal.
So the goal of Right to Life is to eliminate abortion completely. Is this a way of whittling away at it?
If we could, we would. If we could eliminate it by snapping our fingers, if I could cut off my left arm, I would eliminate it. That won't eliminate it because of Roe, as you understand. So yes, we believe we have a winner here in terms of the protected status and discrimination. We've never really take a run at Roe with the discriminatory idea here, and we think we can protect a whole class of children.
All right, Sue Swayze joining us from Indianapolis by Skype. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
And the man behind a series of undercover Planned Parenthood videos is again forced to defend himself. David Daleiden's attorneys claim the seizure of videos and personal property from his Orange County, California home this week was a political favor to California's Attorney General. Tom Brecka, President and Chief Counsel for the Thomas More Society, joining us by Skype from Chicago. You represent David Daleiden. Why do you think this seizure happened now, and what were they after?
Well, Brian, honestly, we think it's politically motivated. There was an article in the LA Times recently, in fact, a couple of them, sort of criticizing the Attorney General in California, Kamala Harris, for not being as aggressive as the prosecutors in Texas, in Houston, where they returned a couple of indictments against David and Susan Merritt. And frankly, we think those indictments were flawed and baseless. We'll be attacking them soon. But this provocation led Ms. Harris, apparently, she's running for the Senate to replace Barbara Boxer, the pro-abortion senator from California. We think it provoked her into taking what we think is a rather rash and, draconian action here by serving a search warrant and seizing his property.
Well, they're going after David from all angles. You met with him the night before this raid. How is he holding up in the face of this harassment?
Well, Brian, he's this young man, all of 27 years old, is a real pillar of strength, totally committed to his mission, which is to let people find out the truth about this dark underworld of abortion and Planned Parenthood and the trade in body parts of aborted babies. It's a commercial trade. It's just obscene and gross, but it's also illegal. It's blatantly illegal. And he's dedicated to see this through to the end. And I'm happy to say we're able, with God's grace, to be there with him.
All right, Tom Brecka with the Thomas More Society. We're grateful that you're representing David. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Brian.
Coming up, refugee crisis. Pope Francis brings attention to the plight of migrants, and controversy in Mississippi. Why the state has taken center stage in the debate over religious freedom.
È la testimonianza dei nostri martiri di oggi.
Pope Francis says it's the saints of ordinary life, the martyrs of today, who carry the church forward. At his daily Mass homily this morning, Francis said they do so with their consistent and courageous witness to the risen Christ, thanks to the working of the Holy Spirit. And thank you for joining us on this Thursday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. The Vatican now confirms Pope Francis will travel to the Greek island of Lesbos a week from Saturday. Mary Shovlin joining us from Rome. Mary, why did the Holy Father decide to make this trip, and why now?
Well, as we've seen over the past year, hundreds of thousands of immigrants and refugees have been fleeing to Lesbos, and they get there through Turkey. They've been fleeing situations of violence in North Africa and throughout the Middle East. And of course, from Lesbos, they gain entrance into the European Union. Now, the European Union has already been dealing with the migration crisis over the past year, and there are some feelings of resentment building up as these countries try to welcome them. On top of this, the European Union has just now brokered a deal with Turkey to ship these refugees back from Lesbos to Turkey and back to where they came from. Those boats have just started to leave the island of Lesbos this week. So just as the doors seem to be closing, Pope Francis is going to say, please keep them open.
The Holy Father has advocated for refugees just when he became Pope in 2013 in Lampedusa there in Italy, more recently at the Mexico-U.S. border. What's the different dimension of this trip?
Both of those trips you just mentioned, Brian, are him going as the head pastor of the Catholic Church. He is going to give a strong message. We know it's an important message for his papacy. With this visit, he's been invited by the ecumenical patriarch, Bartholomew I. He's been invited by the president of Greece. Joining him along with the ecumenical patriarch will be the Archbishop of Athens and all Greece, Hieronymus II. So these three churchmen will be standing on the shores of Lesbos, shoulder to shoulder, despite of centuries of schism that have divided them, crying out for peace and solidarity and to keep these refugees safe and welcome.
Mary Shovlin joining us from Rome. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
And Pope Francis meets today with Methodist church leaders. They are in Rome, marking the opening of the new Methodist ecumenical office there. The Holy Father greeted them saying, "We come together united in the faith that Jesus is Lord and that God has raised him from the dead." He called Catholics and Methodists true brothers and sisters in baptism. The High Court of Colombia, considered a conservative Roman Catholic nation, paves the way for legal marriage of same-sex couples. Previously, they've been allowed only to form civil unions, but still adopt children. Connecticut now joins New York and Vermont in banning state-funded travel to Mississippi. Those states are protesting Mississippi's new religious liberty law, which opponents call discriminatory. The Heritage Foundation's Roger Severino is joining us. First businesses, now other states applying pressure on these states and their religious liberty laws. What gives here?
Well, we're seeing the cultural left team up with big business to oppose religious liberty laws all across the country. It's an unfortunate development, and Governor Deal of Georgia caved and vetoed an already watered-down religious liberty bill. But there's good news. Mississippi, Governor Bryan, has actually passed a very strong religious liberty bill, and Governor McCrory in North Carolina as well has stood up to the left. And let's talk about big business. So Apple has been leading the charge, yet Apple has an Apple store in United Arab Emirates where they criminalize same-sex conduct, and Apple employees could be thrown in jail for 14 years. Yet Apple's not pulling out of UAE, so there's a lot of hypocrisy going on.
Are there any businesses that are supporting these laws in the states that pass them?
Small businesses for sure. And the Mississippi law in particular is very targeted and very narrow. It protects small businesses, bakers, florists, photographers, like the grandmother from Washington State that only wanted to serve everyone but did not want to serve a same-sex wedding ceremony. That's who's protected by these bills, and they deserve the respect of the country. They actually are standing up for their faith, and they need to be protected in law.
She didn't refuse to serve the same-sex couple, just when it came to the marriage ceremony, which she couldn't go along with. I wonder if consumers can make a difference here, especially with the businesses jumping in the way they are.
Consumers should actually cut through the hype, read the laws, don't listen to the media. They are actually mischaracterizing these bills grossly. And they should actually vote with their pocketbooks. Listen to these businesses and find out what they stand for. Do they stand for your values or don't they stand for your values? And they should buy accordingly.
Is this law in Mississippi meant to challenge the Supreme Court ruling on marriage?
It's a response to it. It doesn't challenge it directly. Everybody who's entitled to a marriage license is going to get a marriage license. This is about the freedom of people to live and act according to their beliefs without government coercion on the issue of marriage. So you would expect a response when the Supreme Court upended the laws of every state. People have a right to say, no, you cannot force me to violate my own conscience and keep government out of it.
Makes it very clear. Roger Severino with the Heritage Foundation. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you very much.
Up next, Family Matters, the vital role of women in the Catholic community. And surprise discovery, unearthing what appear to be ancient Christian ruins.
Mẹ Mary Angelica, nữ tu dòng chiêm niệm Thánh Clara.
Look at this Vietnamese video as news of Mother Angelica's passing on Easter Sunday is broadcast around the world. Thank you for joining us on EWTN News Nightly. I'm Brian Patrick. As we anticipate tomorrow's release of the Pope's Apostolic Exhortation on the Family, Catherine Zeltner speaks tonight with a Vatican official about the role of women in the family and in the church.
For critics claiming the church has little room for women, meet Ana Cristina Villa Betancourt. The Colombian native heads the women's section of the Pontifical Council for the Laity. She says the recent Synod on the Family and its highly anticipated apostolic exhortation come during a critical time in the church.
There are a lot of struggles in family life today. We have a beautiful teaching in the Catholic Church, but that teaching is sometimes struggling to get down to earth. It was difficult at times, and because the theme is difficult today, but those difficult conversations are important for us to have so that we can evangelize the world.
The Vatican official knows firsthand the gift femininity brings to the family and to the church.
How does the women's role in the family impact the church?
Oh, well, in an incredible way. I like very much to say that women's role in the family is an ecclesial mission. The church wouldn't exist and wouldn't develop and wouldn't grow without the very important role that mothers have in transmitting the faith.
Villa Betancourt says a mother's work may look simple, but it's deeply meaningful.
Like, for example, teaching a child to make the sign of the cross, to pray in the mornings when they get up, in the evening when going to bed. All of that they are doing in the name of the church, and all of that makes the church grow. It's fundamental for the church, maybe more fundamental than the work one does in the Vatican in an office.
Catherine Zeltner, EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you, Catherine. Ending human trafficking by 2030. That is the goal of a global conference beginning today at the United Nations. It's a project of the Holy See's Permanent Observer Mission to the UN. Dr. Gracie Christie, Policy Advisor to the Catholic Association, joining us from New York City. You're there ahead of a UN conference on human trafficking. Tell us about it.
Well, I'm here to watch this trafficking conference put on by the Permanent Mission of the Holy See at the UN. And this is a pet project of Pope Francis, and I hope of all Christians and Catholics, to end the scourge of modern-day slavery, which is a very real global reality now, even to this day.
And what is the Holy See doing toward ending this modern-day slavery?
Well, first of all, acknowledging the extent of the problem. The estimates are 27 to 30 million slaves alive today, whether labor or sex slaves. And then trying to form worldwide and global partnerships, because this is a huge problem and needs a very strong and concerted attack to end it.
Well, this may be obvious, but why is the Church, led by Pope Francis, taking such an active role in this area?
Well, the Church has, 2,000 years of history of saying that all people deserve dignified lives, free lives, and that nobody should be used for someone else's gain. So the church has to take a number one role in fighting for these beautiful Christian ideals.
Gracie, it's one thing for the Holy Father, maybe the United Nations, to address a global issue like this, but what can regular folks like us do about this tragedy?
I think number one is to get informed, look up slavery, modern-day slavery, and find out how prevalent it is and how it may exist in your own backyard, where we have trafficking in the United States over the border of men and women and even children. And also pay attention to what's going on in Congress, the different bills that are coming up to fight this scourge, and let your representatives know how you feel, how strongly you feel about it.
Dr. Gracie Christie, Policy Advisor to the Catholic Association, Skyping with us from New York City. Gracie, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
And construction workers at the Gaza Strip may have discovered a Christian religious site from the Byzantine era. The Ministry of Tourism and Antiquity says the discoveries include remnants of marble Corinthian pillars. The columns and various stone blocks are decorated with elaborate engravings dating back to the 3rd and 4th centuries. The ruins, some bearing the Greek cross, likely belong to a church that existed in what is now Gaza City. Until tomorrow, for the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Brian Patrick. We leave you tonight with a look at the Swiss Guard on duty protecting the Vatican today. Good night and God bless.